thank goodness I don't have to have a picture of Joe Biden hanging up in my living room, and somebody come in and inspect it to make sure it's clean.
Yeah, could you imagine? I mean, well, and just when you have that
I can't imagine having a picture of Joe Biden, no.
Yeah, we still live in a great country for sure.
Joining me on my podcast today is Spencer Cutler. Spencer and I go way back. We used to work construction together. I spent a lot of time with his brother growing up with him in junior high and high school. Spencer is an Idaho native. He's a good family man and works at the local college here, and he's running for a city council seat in Twin Falls, Idaho. So we're going to have a fun talk today. Dude, it's been like, I don't know, how long has it been since we've hung out, since we've seen each other?
Well, I was thinking about that on the way here, and what I remember, and this had to be at least 15 years ago. I went on, well, maybe 13 years ago. I did a ride along with you when you were with Twin Falls Police Department, and I think that's the last time we hung out.
Oh wow, yeah, I remember that. That was I remember. Didn't you? So I know you're a gun carrying Idahoan.
Yes.
And I think, didn't you bring your gun along with you, just in case?
I don't remember that. I'm not saying I didn't. I mean, I'm relatively untrained, right? I mean, I would have done nothing but get myself in trouble. But I may, I don't know, maybe.
You never know. I just remember when we were working construction together, you always had a pistol with you,
That's right.
in case of an emergency.
Because you never know. Which
is smart, right? I mean, It's smart. I mean, if you're going to have one, you might as well carry it. And but the other side of it is too, if you're going to have one and carry it, you might as well train with it.
Yeah. I stopped carrying when I had kids that were old enough to be mobile. I was worried about being able to keep it secure. That one time I forget and leave it in my vehicle, or I set it down in the house, and have just recently started carrying again. So now it makes me want to start training better. The older I get, the more I realize how foolish you are when you're young, and definitely need to train better.
Yeah, well, we all do. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I mean, I have a few guns, and I need to be better about carrying them in the first place, because sometimes I'm just like, I'm not going to carry it today. Yeah. Especially during the summer, it's hot outside. I'm usually wearing shorts and usually just a t-shirt. It's harder to keep it concealed. But, in this day and age, I think I need to be better about carrying it.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely think there's a value to having people that are trained and I guess have due caution, carrying. There's some security in that. I want your take, though, on these people we see open carrying, especially in places like supermarkets.
Yeah, obviously it's their right to do it. I think for the most part, the people that are carrying openly are doing it for show. They want people to see that they're carrying and go, ooh, look at that guy. He's carrying a gun. Yeah. He must be really cool. I mean, because I don't know. And it's just my opinion, but I think carrying concealed is the smarter way to carry it. Obviously, it takes a little more time drawing your weapon when it's concealed, but I think it puts you at sort of a tactical advantage.
Right. I never wanted a bad guy to know that I'm someone he needs to worry about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's one of the I think for the people that carry it openly, like on their hip or wherever. And I've been seeing it a lot more recently for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know what the reason for that is.
Yeah. But
I just think, if I think I was walking into Walmart and I saw a guy walking in with a gun, and I thought if I'm a bad guy sitting in the parking lot and I'm planning something in Walmart, I'm like, okay, so that's the guy I need to take out first. So again, there's, like I said, it's their right to do it. But I don't know. I think it's smarter to conceal it.
Yeah. And if one of those people is actually out there listening, give us your reasoning. Maybe there's something I hadn't thought about. It might be a good point of view that I just never considered, but yeah, not my style right now.
No. Well, and it draws attention to yourself, unwanted attention, I think. Again, the only pro that I can see to carrying open is just for a quicker draw. Yeah. But, in cases where you would need to draw quickly, I can't imagine any scenario that would take place like in a grocery store, or, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because it's not like police officers who confront people who are armed, or whatever, and they may need to draw quickly, if someone gets the drop on them. More than likely, like if you're in a restaurant or a grocery store, you're not going to be immediately confronted by a potential threat.
Yeah.
Usually it's going to take place somewhere else, and you're going to find out about it, and you'll have time to draw your weapon anyway. So yeah, in my opinion, I think carrying concealed is the better way to go.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, if there was a situation where I needed to draw quickly, I'm not well trained enough to handle that situation anyways. No, that's why we have police officers. So.
Yeah, right.
I guess in that case, the police officer's probably not there anyways, but
yeah. Well,
I don't know.
I mean, I don't think you can be 100% prepared for every single scenario, Yeah. So, I mean, just as a civilian walking around exercising your Second Amendment, might as well carry it under your shirt or on your ankle or something. I don't know, but for me, I would rather have it concealed just because I don't want people knowing that I have a weapon, and I don't want to draw that attention to myself.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah.
So, but so for everybody listening and watching, Spencer and I go way back. When did we? Let's see. That I was thinking about this when you and I were both working construction together. It was what, 2000.
That, I think that was 20 years ago.
Jeez, has it really been that long?
Yeah.
That's that's because it was before I got married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and further than that, so high school, junior high, you were friends with my brother, who nicknamed
Sherman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, we're still friends.
Yeah. Shout out. Jeremy is the official real given name at birth. Yeah. It's kind of funny because looking back, would you have ever thought that 20 or even 25 years down the road that we'd be in our respective positions having a podcast catching up on old times?
No, not at all. And I think about that. That's a something that I think about a lot is, 20 years ago, looking ahead to, me being 40 now, I never anticipated that this is how my life was going to go at all. And yes, certainly, I saw your announcement on Facebook that you were running for city council, and I'm like, right on.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And then it got me thinking about, all the time we spent together on construction sites and joking around and, giving the boss a hard time. And so yeah, those were simpler times, weren't they?
They were. Everybody says, enjoy it while you can because, the good old days are happening now. I think we knew it was the good old days, but we also realized you just can't do that forever.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, some people try and they're doing all right, but at some point you just can't do that forever, I guess. So.
No. Yeah. At some point you gotta. I mean, well, like you said, there are people who try to do that, but I mean, when you're getting paid $10 an hour to do hard physical manual labor, it's an incentive to do other things and move on.
Yeah, it's fun stuff, but it destroys your body, and then you're out in the sun every day getting skin cancer, and just it takes a toll.
Were you? Let's see. Were we working together when we built that dentist office in Shoshone?
Yes.
Do you remember doing that?
I forgot about that.
Driving back and forth to Shoshone, and we all got sick because it was like in the middle of the winter. And every one of us caught a cold.
Probably breathing the same air in the pickup truck driving there or something.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember it was just so cold. Like, why did we take this job in the middle of the winter in Shoshone, Idaho?
Right.
That was like one of the most miserable experiences. And then the only place to eat in Shoshone was that gas station right there at that intersection, the main intersection in town.
Yes.
And we would go over there and we'd get burritos or tacos or whatever, and we'd buy lottery tickets. And
that's right. For people that drive through Shoshone today and think, well, this is not much of a town, it was even less of a town 20 years ago.
Yeah. But thanks to us, there's a dentist office there. Well, I don't even know if it's still there, if it's still a dentist office, but yeah.
Yeah. So I won't name the person, and it wasn't this job, but do you remember a person who may or may not have got themselves with a nail gun more than one time?
So, yeah, I still have the scar. Oh boy, that was a lesson learned. I was still pretty new to framing, like to framework, and I just I thought I was just picking it up so good, and we were nailing, I think it was floor joists, And I was just going along, just punching that nail gun, you know, and sure enough, it just that, you know, it caught the lip of that baseboard just right, and my hand was just a little too close to the edge. Had I been holding the floor joist out, you know, just maybe like 6 inches
Yeah.
towards the middle, I probably would have been okay. But
Well, am I remembering wrong? Did you do it twice?
I only remember the one time.
Okay, so maybe that was another one of our coworkers that did the same thing.
Maybe it was.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I'm sure it happens all the time on, you know,
probably.
on construction sites. But
I was actually I'm the maintenance director at the college now, and I actually had a meeting with my staff today, and we were talking about workplace accidents, and we were talking about all the guys we know that are into blasting, like rock blasting, missing teeth and fingers, because blasting caps, you know, they used to hold them in their teeth and might accidentally go off. And same thing with, you know, fingers. You know, the blasting caps themselves are pretty potent.
yeah.
And yeah, we named like 3 people that we'd all worked with, and every single one of them was missing fingers and teeth. So
Is that like a thing here, and like people are into rock blasting, or
well, this is for like you know major highway projects or utility work where you got to go through rock.
yeah.
You can blast it with explosives quicker than trying to, you know, trench it with a rock trencher or things like that. Yeah.
That sounds like fun, but I am definitely not savvy enough with explosives to be comfortable not blowing my own fingers off and blowing my own teeth out. You would think that people who do that, I mean, regularly would know that, like, okay, I probably shouldn't put this in my mouth.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I don't really know how blasting caps work. I've not experienced with that, but
Well, we all do things we know we shouldn't do, right? You get away with it until you can't get away with it anymore, and then
Oh, so how's that? So how long have you been at the college then doing that?
So I've been the director for 4 years. Actually started a year and a half before that, but yeah. So I'm the director. So all basically the physical assets of the college, whether it's motor pool, grounds, buildings, responsible for maintaining and taking care of that type of stuff.
Okay.
And then prior to that was construction work. So, you know, you and I started together on a crew doing mostly framing.
Yeah.
We did a little bit of other stuff.
Yeah.
But after that, I did a lot of estimating and project management.
Okay.
And that was fun. I really liked it, but just needed a change of pace. I do get bored. Well, we all get bored, but I get bored, and just thought the college seemed like a great next adventure, and I got the job. It worked out.
Nice.
So, yeah.
That's cool. And they treat you well over there?
Yeah, they do. I gotta, you know, talk the college up.
You might as well.
Yeah, you know, it's a great resource for the community because we produce people that actually are useful. You know, it's you know, if you want to be a school teacher, it's a great place to start and transfer to one of the 4-year institutions. If you want to be a dental hygienist or a car mechanic or electrician, you know, go through the apprenticeship program. You know, those are all things that we do, so it's fun. It's fun to be associated with that.
Nice.
I don't actually do any of the instruction. I'm just pure overhead. But behind the scenes, it's fun to be responsible for just making sure all this stuff works.
That's cool. So it's a leadership position.
Yes.
So I mean, there's an upside to leadership, and then there's obviously a downside. And it sounds like, I mean, the upside is, you know, like you said, you get to oversee a program that helps develop useful people. And but so what's the downside? Like, as far as leading other people and other employees?
Well, the downside, it's the good and bad are the same. So, you know, my department fluctuates seasonally with how many people, but it's about 70 people. And it's great to work with them. It's so rewarding, the relationships you build, things like that. There's a real sense of camaraderie that develops. It's also the downside because leading people is really hard.
Yeah.
I would love to be a carpenter, and all I do is show up. I worry about the quality of my work, and when I'm done, I clock out for the day. I don't have to think about it till I come back. When you're trying to make sure that other people do their job well and your success is based on them doing a good job, it's a whole new challenge that I'm not necessarily as comfortable with.
Yeah.
But it's very rewarding, so I stick with it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I could, on the idea of leadership, one of my coworkers who's in a different department, but our offices are right next to each other, is a retired Twin Falls police chief. And so,
Jim?
Yeah, Jim.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's been able to, I shouldn't say be able to, I bugged him a lot.
Yeah.
Jim, how do I handle this?
Yeah.
Never thought about this before. What do you do? And has coached and mentored a lot. And sometimes he just says, just suck it up and deal with it.
Yeah.
Like, there's no easy way through this one. Just got to deal with it. Yeah.
I liked Jim. So he was the chief when I first started at the police department.
Okay. So was he chief or a captain at that point?
He had just promoted
to
chief. Yeah, he was just appointed.
Cool.
Like right at the same time I got hired. And he was one of those. He's not. See, he might hear this at some point. So I have to put this in a way that he's going to understand and not get offended. I mean, basically, he's just like a no bullshit, like, just say it how it is. He's not going to sugarcoat it. Mm-hmm. But I appreciated that about him because I knew exactly where I stood with him, and he was. He was a chief who every once in a while he would get in his uniform and come patrol. He wasn't just sitting behind a desk all of the time. If there was ever, an incident or something that we were working on, or like a series of burglaries or something. This is what I remember about. I have a very vivid memory of former Chief Jim Munn. Mm-hmm. We had this big series of burglaries, probably back in like 2009, 2010, and he's like, and it was, I mean, they were getting away with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stolen property, and just vandalizing and burglarizing homes all up and down the President streets. Mm-hmm. And he's like, all right, that's it. I'm getting in my uniform and I'm getting a patrol car and I'm going to go out and I'm going to stop everybody who's walking around, and I thought it was really cool of him to do that and not just sit behind a desk and wait for everybody else to solve the problem.
Yeah.
He went out and got involved, and I remember people being just so, because there's a way to do policing now, and there's a way that policing was done back in the 80s and 90s when he was a patrolman, and he was still kind of using some of the same, I don't know, I guess, qualities, so to speak. And he was just very blunt with people. And these days, even just being blunt as a police officer, it offends people, and sometimes it can get you jammed up. Yeah. But he was blunt, he was direct, and like I said, he didn't treat people with kid gloves. Yeah. If he saw somebody walking down the street that he thought might be out burglarizing houses, he'd yell at him and give him commands and say, "Hey, get over here! I need to talk to you." And it wasn't like, "Hey, do you mind if I talk to you for a second?" It was like, "Get over here and let me talk to you because we got a problem in the community that we need to solve." And this is going to pull me away from my desk.
Well, he is that way, and I think it's a good quality. He can get away with it too. He has a way that he can just call BS, mm-hmm. and people recognize it. Oh, he's calling BS. I get it. I mean, not always. Sometimes it escalates, but but more than the average person for sure. And he's equal with everybody. Yeah. Yeah. He's very genuine. You can tell that he's the real Jim because he's the same with everybody. Doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah. There's a lot of funny stories about him. I remember when I was working in narcotics. I was a narcotics detective, and there was 4 of us in the unit, and he was the chief at the time, and this was like right before his retirement, and he was trying to help out with we were doing a policeman's ball, and the FOP, the Fraternal Order of Police, our chapter, was in charge of putting it on, and he was part of the FOP leadership. Okay. And so was one of our narcotics guys, and Jim just comes storming back into our office, and he shuts the door, and he's like, "I need some money." And we're just looking at him like, "What are you talking about? What do you need money for?" Like, money for what? And one of our guys who, he kind of knew exactly what he was talking about. And it's the policeman's ball, right? Mm-hmm. It's not, I mean, it's a fundraising event, it's fun to go to, but he came in there with like this sense of urgency, like, we have to serve a search warrant or something, but he just needed money. I can't even remember what the money was for, but he just needed some money to to buy some tickets or something. I don't know what the money was for, but he came in and was like, I need money.
You're like, oh, this couldn't have been a phone call tomorrow morning. This
Right, or like an email,
Yeah.
I need some money. We're in there doing narcotics work, investigating cases, and he comes in and I need money. But when you're the chief, you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Darn straight.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. No, it's been fun working with him. It's been a good experience at the college. He is part of the reason that I'm actually going for city council.
Mm-hmm.
I've had some interest in it for about a year, well, more like a year and a half. And then I mentioned it to him, and he says, you're perfect. He goes, I'll be your campaign manager.
Oh.
I thought, well, that helps right there.
Yeah.
Great. So.
Nice. So now I know that he was on the city council for a while. How long has it been since he's been out of there?
So, well, how long has he been retired? Do you remember?
Jeez, when did he retire?
Because he was on council for 4 years right after he retired.
Okay. Gosh. I can't even remember now. I think it must have been like 2011, 2012, something like that.
Yeah, that could be.
Yeah. Okay, so he was in there till like what, 2016?
Yeah, maybe even maybe 2014.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. And then he's been an instructor for the law enforcement program at the college. That's another thing the college does, is they have a law enforcement program.
Yeah.
And then he is the campus safety director right now. So.
Oh, okay. I used to teach at the law enforcement program quite a bit, actually, when I was still with the Twin Falls Police Department.
So did you go up in the pad room and roll in the jiu-jitsu and?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time up in that room.
Yeah.
A lot of training, and then a lot of instructing. I mean, that's where, if we ever had training like ground control or arrest techniques or something like that, that's where we'd always do it, as a department.
Yeah.
And then of course whatever training. I mean, let's see. So when I first started teaching, I think Brett Reed was the program director, and then Don Hall took it over.
Okay.
And then Rob Storm took it over from Don Hall.
Yeah.
And all three of those guys had me instruct something. And so I've spent a lot of time in the classrooms up there and in the mat room. So
cool.
Yeah, walking up and down that ramp,
Yeah. The long ramp.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. So once you're, if you're an active working police officer on the clock, do you get opportunities for training like that to keep improving those skills and keep them fresh? Or do they put is a lot of that on you independently? You just got to do it on your own?
So that's really interesting. That's something that I discuss in my book, but it's both. So police officers have to have a certain amount of, we'll call it continuing education credits in order to maintain their certification, right? So whenever there's training that that takes place in-house, that's paid by the department because it's mandatory. It's mandatory for officers to get those hours and to maintain their certification. But the in-house training that's provided just isn't. I mean, it's not enough. It never is. And the problem is how do you? I mean, police departments only have so much to work with in their training budget, and you have to balance being able to cover the street with on-duty police officers, and then taking officers away from the street in order to train them. So that has to be balanced, and so you can't train as much as you'd like to, but then on your time off, a lot of officers take the opportunity to whether it's jiu-jitsu or kickboxing or wrestling, CrossFit, or just going to the gym. A lot of officers, they put in the effort and they put in the time and whatever money it takes to train a little bit extra other than what the department or the state provides.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's there was one of the stories I talk about in my book is, speaking of jiu-jitsu, there was a lieutenant back in like 2008, 2009, he was a ground control instructor for the state.
Okay. And
he was a jiu-jitsu purple belt. And he understood the importance of jiu-jitsu, which is, it is. Jiu-jitsu is a great tool for any police officer. And he wanted to be able to train some of the other guys who were willing to train for free. And so like on every Tuesday and Friday, we would have training set up at a, in one of the buildings that the city owns. We'd lay out some mats and we'd train for an hour, hour and a half or whatever.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of fun. But we had this one guy, and he was a little bit older than the rest of us, but he always got hurt. Every training session, he would dislocate his thumb or break his wrist, And so when you do those things, you have to go on light duty because, any little injury you have, can inhibit your performance, if you have to get into a fight or a shooting, God forbid.
Is there a lot of people that try to hide that? Like, I don't want to admit that I got hurt.
Yeah. He, unfortunately, he couldn't because he ended up in a cast, and so they tried to shut the jiu-jitsu program down. But we were training in our off-duty time, so, what can they do? They're not paying us to do it, so they can't shut it down on us. That's our personal time. We can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
But it was just interesting, and I understand that it's frustrating when you have an officer go on light duty and now you're down a guy on the road. But, are you going to tell people they can't go skiing or that they can't play basketball or,
right.
drive their vehicle? I mean, you know what I mean? Like there's all kinds of dangerous things that we get involved in on a daily basis. But, just because it leaves you a guy short doesn't mean you can start dictating what people do in their off-duty time.
Right.
But those are some of the things you run into with training. I mean, jiu-jitsu is very, like I said, it's very useful, but it's a physical sport. It's a physical activity. So
yeah,
injuries are possible.
I've wanted to try it really bad, but I'm very intimidated by it. I worry about, hurting my neck, dislocating a finger, and it makes me sound kind of soft. Yeah, I am a little bit soft. I'm kind of a desk jockey, but
well, they're legitimate concerns. However, I will say this, for jiu-jitsu, it's one of the sports or, one of the martial arts that you can train 100% and really avoid getting injured as long as you're smart about it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I haven't trained jiu-jitsu in like probably 3 years now because I got into bodybuilding and those two just don't mix. But jiu-jitsu...
I want to talk about bodybuilding later too.
Okay, we'll talk about that. With jiu-jitsu, like I said, you can train really hard and avoid injuries if you're smart about it. Because the thing about jiu-jitsu is there's a lot of submissions, and all you have to do is tap out in order to avoid going unconscious or breaking a bone or dislocating a joint of some kind.
But you got to keep your ego in check.
Exactly. So that's how I ended up with having bicep surgery. I got caught in an arm bar one day, and I thought, I'm going to fight through it, and then pop, my biceps tendon became avulsed,
Ouch.
As they call it. And so I had to have surgery on it. But had I just tapped out, because I was caught, I was caught in an arm bar. There was no escaping. I should have just tapped, but I didn't. Now, white belts have a hard time learning that and white belts are the beginners, right? So they go in and they don't quite understand that, technique will prevail over strength and speed and size, right? As long as if you can become technical and learn how to move your hips and things like that, move on the ground, then you'll start to pick it up really easy and you'll be successful. But that's a hard thing to pick up if you're not used to that. Yeah. And so they go in and they're just, they're very aggressive, and they rush through things and they try to use brute force, and sometimes you can get injured doing that. The one thing that I would say to beginners is white belts should not train with each other, because you have two people who don't know what they're doing. They're essentially just wrestling and grappling and going really hard. Now, if you have a white belt rolling with, a purple belt or a brown belt or even a black belt, those guys are experienced enough to just kind of flow through the training and recognize, like, hey, listen, you just need to calm down and breathe for a minute and try to work through these techniques and, work through the moves, instead of expelling all of your energy in the first 10 seconds, of training, and try and recognize positions and submissions and, escapes and things like that. So if you get into it and you can start training with even just blue belts, purple belts, then I think you'll be able to avoid getting injured.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Throwing a couple of rookies at each other, I could.
Well, kind of like, with your job, if you've got a new guy who doesn't really know what he's doing as far as, maintenance of any type, you're not going to stick him with another new guy and, hey, you'll go figure this stuff out. You're probably going to, You're probably going to put him with somebody who knows what they're doing and,
Yeah.
somebody that can train him.
Yeah, good analogy. That makes sense.
Yeah. So I would recommend it. I mean, if you want to get into it, I would recommend it. I think the only school we have around here now is Southern Idaho Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So there used to be a couple, but I think there's only one.
Oh, wow.
If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But
I'm familiar with that Southern Idaho Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So this will lead into bodybuilding. So
okay,
I actually have been doing CrossFit for quite a while.
Okay.
So and I know a lot of people love to hate on CrossFit, and that's totally cool. I love it. I go to the pack, so shout out to the pack.
Nice.
It's a good environment there. But I started going a while ago just because my job was so desk heavy. Well, I was either at my desk or in a pickup truck driving around to jobs, talking on my cell phone all the time, and I mean, just in horrible shape.
Yeah.
And so, not knowing what else was out there, I just found the rec center had some. It wasn't technically CrossFit because they didn't have the affiliate they needed to.
Oh, okay.
But basically, someone was teaching CrossFit. I'm like, I don't care. I just got to go to a class where there's some discipline and somebody makes you do something. And come to find out, it was based off CrossFit. Went to a CrossFit box for a while. My wife ended up coaching, and she's amazing at anything like that. I'm not as naturally gifted for that type of stuff. Fell out of that for a while, didn't do anything for a few years, and then I'm going to the pack for about 6 months now.
Sweet.
And I really do enjoy it. It's right next door to the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, the pack is. And I see a lot of those guys going there. I'm like, I want to try that. I'm just scared. So
you should. I mean, they would welcome you with open arms. It's not one of those like overly macho type of environments. I mean, right? Here's the thing. I talked about in my very first episode of my podcast. I interviewed Greg Anderson.
Yes,
he's a former cop out of Seattle, and he's a jiu-jitsu black belt. He was a Army Ranger with the 2nd Ranger Battalion, so he's just a badass. But we were talking about this very thing, and it's the more experienced you are in jiu-jitsu, for example, the more you kind of progress and graduate belts, the more you realize that I guess I should say, the more you leave out sort of the ego and the macho aspect of it, right? White belts go in there with something to prove, like, I'm not as weak as you think I am, or I'm not, whatever. But you soon learn that, you are, because you're getting your ass kicked for like 3 months. It's brutal. But if you can hang in there for those first 3 months and just get through it and, do the training, work hard, start, recognizing the movements and the positions and the techniques. After that 3 months, well, it was 3 months for me. It might, other people might pick it up quicker. But I remember thinking it was about 3 months, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is all starting to make sense. Like
And I've even heard people say, oh, it was 6 months. I just had to be humble enough to get my ass handed to me for 6 months, and all of a sudden, I kind of get this.
Yeah. Like, I recognize that position, and I remember what to do to get out of that position, Now, you're still going to get your ass kicked, but it'll start being less and less, and then pretty soon you'll start kicking ass a little bit, just a little. But then, the more and more you stick with it, the less, I should say, that kind of the less pride you have in yourself. You're willing to just like check it at the door and go, you know what, today I'm probably going to get my ass kicked a lot because there's like 3 or 4 brown belts in here, and I'm still just a white belt or a blue belt, and I'm going to get my ass handed to me, but it's going to be good because I'm going to learn something every time. So I would encourage, like, even if I know it seems intimidating, but it's kind of like the gym. I still do a lot of fitness coaching on the side. And one of the biggest obstacles, especially for females who want to go in and start their fitness journey, is they're worried about the judgment they're going to get from other people walking into a gym. And the reality of it is nobody cares. Nobody cares what you're doing. Nobody cares what you look like. They're just there to work on themselves. Now, you might get 1 or 2 people who are looking around the gym and judging everybody, but so what? Who cares?
They're the minority, and who cares about them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the same with jiu-jitsu. I mean, if you go in there and, like you said, just be humble about it and just realize that you're going to take an ass kicking for a little while and just enjoy it. And then even though you're getting your ass kicked, it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay, so how about this? I'm 42 now.
Mm-hmm.
Before I turn 44, I'm going to go try Jiu Jitsu.
You're 42 now?
I'm 42.
Well, why wait?
Because I'm trying to procrastinate.
I mean, you're already going to CrossFit, right? Are you still doing the CrossFit thing?
Yeah. Haven't been as much the last few weeks because I'm campaigning. I'm in campaign mode.
Yeah.
But typically would do 4 or 5 workouts a week.
Nice.
Yeah. And one thing I've noticed is a lot of people do CrossFit wrong. They get injured.
Mm-hmm.
At the pack, there's people that have backgrounds in like physical therapy, types of training, things like that. They're very particular about warming up properly.
Yeah.
Don't do movements if you don't have the right mobility form. Scale it if you need to. They're all about like, we're not here to prove something. We're here just to keep our bodies healthy.
Yeah.
So that's been great for me. But what I wanted to ask about bodybuilding is just kind of tell me about your journey there. I know you've lifted a lot, but I'm curious because, you know, I'm at a point where I've got a lot of my cardiovascular and my lungs in a good spot. I mean, I can always do better. My mobility's pretty good.
Yeah.
But, you know, I'm not training for hypertrophy, not even a lot of strength training. A lot of it's just metabolic conditioning.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would love to just try some other stuff.
So the one thing I'll say about CrossFit is I used to be one of those guys that gave the CrossFitters a hard time, you know, just because the movements are pretty unorthodox. However, the workouts are really intense, and you can get in fantastic shape if you're doing it correctly and, you know, like you said, not messing around and not, you know, warming up properly, things like that, which you should do in every type of workout, right? Yeah. But especially with CrossFit, because again, the movements are, I want to say precarious. I mean, if you're overhead squatting, you know, things like that, like those things can be pretty risky if you're not careful.
Yeah. And the element I think maybe that adds some risk to it is that you're going for time.
Yeah.
So you may be fatigued. You're pushing yourself really hard for a time, and it's easy to let your form slip or do something that maybe is not smart.
Yeah. I got into bodybuilding, well, serious bodybuilding, probably about 6 years ago. And the thing I liked about it, obviously, I mean, putting on muscle mass is fascinating to me, like the process of doing it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just about going in and lifting weights. It's about nutrition. Nutrition's probably 90% of it, right? If your nutrition isn't dialed in, you're not going to make progress nearly as efficiently as you would otherwise. So learning about the nutrition, and, you know, I became a certified nutrition consultant through the National Academy of Metabolic Science. And
cool.
That's when I started, you know, doing some nutrition consulting. And when I started to understand the nutrition aspect of it is when I started to really grow, you know, because that's what a hypertrophy program is all about. And the thing I like about a bodybuilding or a hypertrophy program is it's low impact, right? You're lifting moderately heavy weights. You know, you can lift heavy if you want to, but you don't need to set world records in powerlifting in order to build mass. So the movements themselves are low impact. It's not as hard on your joints as, say, CrossFit or powerlifting or, you know, running, you know. So
yeah, how many people do we know that have been hurt running?
Right. Like all of them, you know,
no,
strained Achilles or, you know, whatever the case is.
Yeah, and all these people I'm making fun of, I know they can still outrun me, but I know they've been hurt too.
And so I don't run. Running hurts. I'm 260 pounds. You know, I'm not the leanest I've ever been, but even at like 240 or 235, you know, running still hurts.
Ladies and gentlemen, this guy's about my height. He literally has 100 pounds on me.
Well, we train different and we eat different too, I'm sure. But no, bodybuilding is fun. It, you know, I like looking in the mirror every week and going, oh, look, there's some new growth there, you know, a couple half inch or another inch on your delts or, you know, whatever the case is. That was my...
Arnold Schwarzenegger has a quote about it, about how, like, it's kind of a trophy you get to have, and there's only one way to get it. Like, you can't inherit your physique. You know, I forget how he words it. It was actually pretty articulate, but yeah, you know, even if you have a genetic predisposition for it, you still don't get there without a lot of very intense effort, well-planned effort.
Yeah.
It was a great quote. I should look it up. And
yeah, well, I'll have to look that up too. I'm sure I've read it before, but it's and there is, I mean, the balance of volume and intensity with, with trying to put on mass is also, sort of one of the challenges that you kind of have to figure out. But again, the one of the habits that I had to break and still have to break is, again, going back to the warm up thing. I don't warm up nearly well enough, as well as I should.
And we're getting old enough that it's even more and more important.
Yeah, right. It's, I mean, well, and now, I feel I'm getting to the point where I have to stop. I probably have to change things up from a hypertrophy program and work on more muscular endurance and mobility and things like that. Because even though the weights that I'm lifting aren't nearly as heavy as they used to be, with the age increase, those lighter weights, right, quote unquote, are taking a toll on my joints.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but no, it was fun. The bodybuilding journey was fun. I actually was prepping for a show last year in March, but then COVID hit and everything went on lockdown and they canceled a bunch of shows. And for me, the contest preparation process was pretty difficult. It's hard for me to get lean enough to be on stage, at like 4 or 5% body fat, and being so depleted. And I know I'm whining about this, and there's all kinds of competitors all over the world that are going, "Oh, what's he whining about?" We do this all the time.
It's okay. I'm here to listen.
But I mean, I think I was at about 20 grams of carbs a day, which is incredibly low, right? And I'm walking around the grocery store like a zombie. I'm leaning down on my grocery cart and I forgot why I was there. I forgot what I needed. I was just so lethargic and I couldn't think properly. And I remember going, man, this sucks. And I had what was called the Keto Flu. You just feel like crap when you're so depleted. And
I bet very few people have really experienced that. When you are that low on carbs, I mean, your brain is like just dying.
Yeah.
It's like, I just need some energy.
Yeah.
Your body, I mean, you get cold easier. I mean, everything, you're just tired. You can't think right.
Well, and I believe it's something like, 60% of the carbs we consume are utilized by our brains, So, yeah, I mean, if you think about how depleted you have to get get that lean. So, I mean, your brain is just in a fog. And I was walking past the bakery section in Fred Meyer, and I looked over at some cookies. They were like some weird, white chocolate cranberry cookie, something I would never actually eat.
And they said, "Officer Nate."
Yes, they did.
Take us.
Said, "Hey, over here." Psst. Like a drug dealer in a dark alley somewhere. And of course, I took the bait. I wasn't supposed to eat these cookies. I bought them, and I only ate half of one, but I immediately felt better. Right? Like I just needed those carbohydrates that were in that cookie. I started to think a little bit better. The fog kind of lifted, I didn't feel just like all sick and gross like I did, so.
Yeah. Well, and 5%, 4% body fat, that's really insane. I mean, I a naturally thin person, like I am training CrossFit.
Yeah.
And I have abs and I'm like 10% body fat.
Yeah. Well, a common misconception with the physique that you see on stage with bodybuilders is that that's how they look all the time, and it's not. They look like that for maybe a week, and not even on stage, because even like the day before they go on stage, they're dehydrating. They're super depleted, and all they've had to eat for like the past week is protein and green vegetables. They might get a refeed, as they call it, with a few carbs the day of the competition to try and help make their muscles look fuller and tighter. Yeah, they're so depleted, they're so dehydrated, so they don't walk around like that. Even a day or two later, once they've started eating a little bit normally again, they look a little fluffier. You know what I mean? They're not as dry, they're not as hard. So they don't look like that all the time. But the interesting thing about bodybuilders or women's figure competitors or physique competitors is when they look that way and they look back at their photos when they were on stage and competing, they kind of get there's this mental thing that happens, and any look any way they look after that just isn't good enough.
Oh,
Especially for women. The women get down to like 6, 7, 8% body fat, and that's not a healthy body fat percentage for women to be at. But they think I need to look like that all the time, and so even though in their off season or whatever, they're still extraordinarily fit, they have this dysmorphia that makes them believe that they're not.
yeah,
So
that's fascinating.
yeah, there's a psychological aspect to the the fitness competitor world that kind of takes its toll on those guys, which is one of the reasons I'm not really that determined to do a show right now, because
Yeah. You think you'll do one though? Like,
I don't know.
who knows?
I'm again, I'm 40, and I mean, I know that's not an excuse, but I have all this stuff going on now, with the podcast and the book and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I've really had, my workout routine is really taken a hit. Like typically I would go to the gym 6 days a week. Now I'm making it in maybe 3 or 4 days a week,
Yeah.
and my workouts are unfocused. I'm distracted by a lot of things, and so I need to get to a point where everything that I have going on now is kind of streamlined and in a routine, so that I can get back into the gym and get back to lifting like I'm used to lifting, and get in better shape.
Yeah, it'll happen. We're in our whole culture, society, not our culture, our society. It's kind of in a point of chaos right now.
A little bit.
Yeah, and sometimes our lives are that way too.
What are your thoughts on the current state of the union?
It's bizarre. Yeah, I don't even know where to start. I think I'm most disturbed by kind of two things, and I think they maybe go hand in hand. This idea of woke culture, the idea that you can't have a dissenting opinion, and then just these polarized opinions, these identity politics. You can't agree to disagree. It's like you are lockstep on our side. You can't deviate an inch, or you're the spawn of Satan. And and maybe it's always been, maybe it's ebbed and flowed and it's been like this before, but because of our modern media, we're more aware of it. But it's disturbing. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I agree. I don't know what it is about wokeism, as it were, but I agree that if you disagree with these particular groups of people, and I like to call them victim groups because that seems to be their identity, right? They seem to claim victim status to something, whether it's, feminism, the radical side of feminism, if it's the traditional side of feminism, the idea that women have something to contribute to society, I'm all for that. But if it's the extreme side of feminism that believe that, all of the world's problems are created by men, and that the world would be better off if men just simply stepped aside and let women take over, I'm not for that. But there's that victim group, and then you have the LGBTQ community, and then you have minority groups.
Yeah, and I think like what you're kind of building what you're saying is, it's a small portion of those groups,
right?
Yeah,
it's I guess subsets of those groups that they believe that they're victims of something. And if you don't agree with that, or if you don't agree to whatever narrative they're trying to push, in that moment, and like you said, then they're going to cancel you and silence you and censor you and demonize you in whatever way they can. And that was my experience with the whole LeBron James TikTok. I disagreed with King James, and his I should say lack of knowledge about the police work and uses of deadly force. And man, I had the haters just come out of the woodwork and do everything they could to cancel me. But yeah, the idea that being woke is the antithesis of free speech. And free speech, in my opinion, the First Amendment is the most important of the amendments. It's how we exchange ideas. It's how we it's how we have access to information. It's how the more intelligent, more competent people can convey messages to the rest of the world and make the world a better place. But we're seeing this trend, or this movement to sort of suppress that.
Yeah,
and it's not a good thing.
And I know there's people out there listening that are gonna be like, oh, a couple of 40-year-old white guys. Yeah, of course. Well, I get it. There's a lot of white males that are total assholes.
Sure.
I get it, definitely. And there's some ugly history. Um, but we're not all that way. Just like,
No.
if you're a part of a different group, we recognize that, yeah, there's a lot of overlap. We actually care about each other. I mean, I've got a wife who's a sweetheart and also not afraid to speak her mind.
Mm-hmm.
She'll put me in my place real quick.
Yeah.
And my oldest child is a daughter. I know you have a daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not afraid to tell us when we're um, out of line.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, and that's a good way to look at it. I mean, I think there are good actors and bad actors in every, let's call them groups, I guess, if you want to separate people.
Mm-hmm.
But men and women, black and white, Democrat, Republican, there's good people and bad people in every one of those categories. But somehow we've gotten to the point where, Democrats and Republicans, I don't think they've ever been more divided than they are today. Maybe I'm wrong. I wasn't alive during the Nixon administration, but
Yeah, and we don't know what it was like before the Civil War, and
yeah,
who knows? But
in my lifetime, I think this is
there you go. In our lifetime,
this is as divided as we've ever been. Yeah, the woke culture, I think, is a scourge on society.
mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any reason to have to cancel or censor or silence people that disagree with you.
Yeah,
I think
if there's people that disagree with me, I just assume they're free to speak their mind because I want to know what they're really thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, if they are absolute lunatics, I want to know they're lunatics.
Right.
If they're right and I'm wrong, which I doubt, but just if they're right and I'm wrong, well, ideas should be out there. Eventually, the truth will rise to the top.
Yeah. Well, and the idea that if you feel like you need to censor or silence the opposition, then maybe your ideas aren't as solid as you think they are. If you have to cancel the opposition and not allow them to speak at all,
Yeah.
then I think what happens there is that people are scared to death that you have a certain number of people that are on your side, and if those people who are on your side hear an opposing viewpoint, the thing that scares you the most is they might change their mind, right, and then leave you with a few less supporters. I mean, I don't know. What do you like?
Yeah, I agree. The other thing too is, kind of, because I'm not a very good politician, am I? I'm not smooth enough with my words. I'm trying to figure out how I was going to say this. Yeah, I mean, it's important to speak freely. There may be ideas that are bad, and 100% of people alive, except for the one person speaking the bad idea, recognize that it's a bad idea. But if you censor that idea, then whoever has the power to censor that idea has the power to censor other ideas, and then who ends up being the person that decides what's okay and what's not.
Right.
And I think that's more dangerous than somebody spouting an opinion that, it could be a harmful opinion.
Right.
But I'd rather live with that danger than the danger of someone that has the authority and power to let you, or to not let you speak.
Right.
Yeah.
And to let you make up your own mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how about if they just have all the information, and then I'm an adult, I'll assess the information for myself and make up my own mind about it. But yeah, I think the cancel culture thing is dangerous. I think it's, like I said, I think it's the antithesis of free speech. And I mean, if we don't have free speech, we don't have a whole lot else. I think the ability to speak our minds. I mean, we live in a country where you can literally, just completely berate the president, senators, representatives, governors, whoever, and there's no consequences for that, right? No negative consequences. I don't know if there's any other country in the world, that has that type of liberty and freedom to do that. But I think it's one of the things that makes the United States the most prosperous country in the world. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but
Yeah, I do. I mean, we'll use the office of the president. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat, Republican, whatever. People say some pretty vulgar, brash, terrible things. And I wish they had more respect just for the office of it, even if they can't stand the person.
Right.
But on the flip side, it's beautiful that a person can do that, and you don't have to worry about the Gestapo coming and locking you up or silencing you.
Or do we?
That's the question, right?
Are we getting there? Are we turning into North Korea? I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, and he had on that, I can't remember what her name is, but she defected from North Korea. And she was talking about how every citizen in North Korea, every household has to have a picture of Kim Jong-un. And if that picture has dust on it, then like you and the next 3 generations of your family go to prison or something insane like that. And I'm thinking, people think the United States is a bad place to live. Are you kidding me? Like, I don't have to, thank goodness I don't have to have a picture of Joe Biden hanging up in my living room, and somebody come in and inspect it to make sure it's clean.
Yeah. Could you imagine? I mean, well, and just when you have that,
I can't imagine having a picture of Joe Biden. No.
Yeah. Don't even try too hard. So, yeah. No. We still live in a great country for sure.
Yeah. So as far as your campaign, just real quick before we end.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we're getting there. I know it flew by. As far as your campaign, so what made you want to get into the city council realm?
Yeah, definitely. I just love Twin Falls, and I just feel like this is just my civic duty, and that sounds altruistic and cliche.
I think it's great,
but it is what it is, and it's a thankless job. A lot of people that would do great at it don't, because they just don't want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's important for someone to be willing to do it.
Mm-hmm.
The thing about city is it's really the city provides some basic core services.
Mm-hmm.
It's police and fire protection. It's drinking water, roads, Parks and Rec,
Mm-hmm.
And you're using taxpayer money, whether it's property taxes or revenue from enterprise stuff such as water fees,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately it's the public is paying for it, and it's just important that it's managed wisely because we need to minimize that burden on taxpayers.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not the exciting stuff. It's not the national issues that are making the headlines. It's just the nuts and bolts of making a city work.
And that's important because, like you said, being able to manage tax dollars appropriately, but then also every now and then there's an important issue that needs to be voted on. And I think local issues, local elections, and local leadership probably affects us more than the national stuff does.
Yeah. Well, and it does, even if it's things that you aren't actually setting policy or adopting budget for. You do have a bully pulpit. You can set the tone. You do have a voice that's maybe heard more than the citizen who's not in that office. So, I mean, there's kind of this vague responsibility. I shouldn't say vague, but it's not a black and white, well-defined responsibility. There's things that just by force of personality,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, you do have an effect over for sure. So,
Yeah.
I'm a born and raised Idaho guy. Pretty traditional conservative values. There's a few social things that, I'm kind of in that gray area, I guess. They're not things that I can set policy for.
Yeah.
I'm not going to worry about it. But, primarily is I don't want to be taxed more than I have to, just like my neighbors. And then, I'm so turned off by the power that the federal government has.
Mm-hmm.
It's just too big.
Yeah, it's too much.
But we can provide things at a local level, and if people are dissatisfied with it, it's a lot easier to change.
Yeah.
So, if you're not happy with something the water department's doing, few local citizens actually have a chance of getting that to change.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not happy with federal EPA rules about water, good luck ever affecting that.
Yeah.
So I feel like locally you can actually do things, get things done.
That makes a lot of sense. Where can people find you?
So I'm on Facebook. It's Spencer Cutler for Twin Falls. I'm horrible at social media, so I've been working on that. We do have a live stream event coming up for all the candidates going for my seat. There's 4 of us going for seat 5.
Okay.
So next Tuesday, well, this isn't live, so it's going to be Tuesday, October 26th.
Okay.
Is that right? Tuesday, October 26th, 6 p.m., magicvalley.com. The Times News will be live streaming it, and it's a moderated discussion. And early voting has already started.
Yeah,
so,
saw that.
Yep. So people can go to the county building. For those that grew up here, it's the old hospital, but now they call it County West.
Mm-hmm.
And main floor, main lobby. Just go inside. The signs will point you where to vote. It's really easy. You can register at the polls if you just have a driver's license with your current address on it. Other picture ID works too, but you do need to have. The easiest is if it's a state-issued ID with your picture and a current address. It's the easiest way.
Yeah.
But, and then the election day is actually November 2nd. So if you want to do the traditional, go to your polling place on election day. It's Tuesday, November 2nd.
How about that? Yeah. We still do that?
We still do that.
That's good.
Yeah, you can't walk up with a dozen paper ballots and put them in. They will stop you in Idaho.
Good, as they should.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, it was fun to have you on and to get caught up. We'll have to do it again.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I know you have at least one pretty big headliner coming up, so I'm glad you could practice on me, the local dude or whatever.
Hey, man, it was, like I said, it was a lot of fun, and we go way back, and I was happy to see that you're running for office, and I just think, I think your platform is simple, but I think that's what works. It's like it's about accountability, right? So I'll be voting for you.
Thank you.
And good luck with the campaign. And let's see. So you're on Facebook at Spencer. Is it just Spencer Cutler?
Yeah, Spencer Cutler for Twin Falls.
Okay. Yeah. Instagram or anywhere else?
Yeah, Instagram too.
Okay.
So Facebook and Instagram.
Nice. All right. Well, cool, man. Well, good luck with everything. Let me know if you need anything. And yeah, it was fun having you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Also, remember to get your copy of my book, Never Off Duty. It's available for purchase at d'angelopublications.com or officernate.com. We'll be back with more of your favorite conservative content. This is the Officer Nate Podcast.